Hey everybody, welcome back to the Journey podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. I'm here with my good friend Jeff Nelson, our resident tech political guru and advisor, also one of my besties, and my co-founder at Blavity Inc. We're filming and recording this episode on Friday. Not Friday.
Yeah. Well, it's Friday. It's Friday because yesterday was good.
It was a good night. So we're recording this on
Yeah.
Friday, August 23rd. I am slightly sleep deprived because my son is sick and he stayed up last night and we stayed up last night waiting for Beyonce and she did not show up to the DNC. So
What a crazy
what a
night.
wild.
Yeah, so we're recording this after the last night of the DNC. Lots of things happened. Some things were said they were going to happen and they didn't happen. So what a world.
What a world. So we're probably trying to get this episode out so it's not super stale for you all. But today we're going to talk about some politics, this election, and then we'll also talk about AI. You guys know my favorite topic. The world of AI continues to move quickly. So Jeff and I are going to just share some updated use cases on how we've been using it lately and also things that we've been playing with as running a media company. There's a lot of things that impact the business. So thinking about content creation and automation. And so I look forward to our discussion. Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Debaun, a passionate entrepreneur and life advisor. With the Journey podcast, you'll discover that success isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've taken control of their lives. Join me on my own journey to discover the secret sauce behind reaching success with permission from no one else.
Excited. This is a good time to be me. I mean, it's like the cross section of all the things I care about. So as you mentioned, politics, tech, AI, so many things. And plus AfroTech is around the corner. So it's a good time of year. I'm excited.
Yes, you've been basically doing machine learning since you were 5. So
I know, right?
it's definitely peak Jeff season.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so what were your first takeaways from last night's DNC?
Phenomenal. Kamala's speech was phenomenal. One thing that I did, I intentionally put my phone down and didn't look at Twitter or any of the discourse around her speech while I was watching it. You know, sometimes when I'm watching the speeches, like when I watch the Obama speeches, a lot of times I just want to see the memes in real time, right? When I was watching the Obama speeches or Oprah speech or Hillary speech, you know, you kind of want to be in the conversation in real time. I intentionally wanted to take in and react to Kamala's speech without any outside influence. And I was so captivated. I was so moved. She looked wonderful. She looked presidential. She sounded presidential. She sounded strong. She sounded ready. I mean, like, I get emotional thinking about it just because, you know, at the core, what I was struck by from her speech and even the DNC as a whole, she's a good person, right? Like, I think she's a person, regardless of whether you agree with her views on some things, whether you think she's a cop, whether you this or that. At the end of the day, I think she cares about people, right? And I think Joe Biden cares about people. And I think that the DNC really showed that wherever Democrats are on issues, these are good people who are really trying to do good in the world. And so to see someone, a Black woman of South Asian descent, who was thrust into this unlikely position.
Yeah.
I mean, a month ago, she became the nominee and was thrust into this position. To see her standing there and 100% fit the bill and look the part, sound the part, play the part. It's just like, what a time to be alive. So I thought it was phenomenal. What did Langston think? Well, you know, what were your thoughts? What did you all think?
I was just really curious how they were going to handle the last night because there's a lot of pressure on a lot of different parties, from a lot of different parties, to address Palestine in a more serious way. And that's my biggest issue.
How did you react to that part of the speech? Because I think that was such an interesting part that got a lot of discourse. So what was your reaction?
Well, I thought it started off and I was like, weak, this is a weak response. And then she paused and then she said what she really wanted to say. You know, a politician, you got to say the first part if you want to win. Yeah, I expected her to go in a little bit heavier earlier on the despair, the trauma, the issues, and the disaster and genocide. I knew she was never going to say the word genocide. You know, I don't like it being called a war. That implies that there's like another country fighting. And it's like, it's not a country fighting. It's one country against another non-country. So, but then I was like, you know what? This is much better than what Biden did. And this is better than what anyone said so far in America at that level. And so I'll take it. I'll take it. And she said ceasefire, which I think is important. I also felt like the first half of the speech, I don't feel like those speech writers timed her speech and her sister's speech right. Like I feel like her sister's speech should have been
Mm,
earlier in the week because they kind of said the same
mhm,
thing. So
mm. That's an interesting point. I think you bring up something that's important about the Palestine section of the speech. There's a rhetorical thing that has changed, and I would encourage all of us who are sympathetic to what is happening in Gaza and the plight of the Palestinians, to take note of it. Obviously, we want a world where this is not happening, and many people, the uncommitted coalition
critical issue.
is one example where there's a certain view of like, if the United States does X, then that world will come to exist, and until X happens, we are upset. But what I would encourage people to look at is certainly what you mentioned, the signs of
Yeah.
progress, advocating for a ceasefire, advocating for a hostage deal. But not the rhetorical shift. Historically, in the United States, this issue of Israel and the Israel and Palestinian conflict, which is just a larger historical conflict, historically, the rhetorical stance of every US major politician has been Palestinians have this right, but Israel has the right to defend itself,
Yeah.
right? When you have two parts of a sentence and you have, A but B, the B is emphasized. That's what you leave people with. The rhetorical shift is that, yes, you started with Israel has a right to defend itself. But we've now, instead of the but being Israel has the right to defend itself, we're saying, yes, that's true, but let's emphasize what right the Palestinians have, which is the right to self-determination. And she used
She
that
did.
phrase.
I
So,
liked that.
yes. So I would just encourage people to take note, like, yes, it's not, there's a long way to go on that issue. But the way that she is talking about this issue is substantively different than Joe Biden has historically talked about it, than the United States has talked about it. And that is an encouraging sign. I would hope people would take it
I
as
think
such.
so. And I think it's also softened the people who are single issue voters on this issue, although
Mhm.
the data is pretty clear that actually most Americans are not single issue voters on global issues, actually.
Correct. Hmm.
So as much as people want to be upset about stuff, they actually, when they vote, it's not necessarily in this way. But, the next
Hmm.
generation may be false polling, maybe just they're polling the
Yeah.
wrong cohort. Because I do think this younger generation and also in some of the swing states, this is one of the biggest issues. So we'll see how it evolves. There's still a long way to go between now and November. So I imagine they're
There
going to
is.
get more progressive, not more conservative. And
Are you talking about the Harris campaign,
yeah,
or that's interesting? I don't know. I don't actually know. It's this interesting space we're in where for Kamala Harris to have been vice president, she is the second highest ranking official in the country, and she's still really this unknown quantity,
yeah,
and she's been in it for a month. And so, I think people automatically assume, oh, she's California, she's a San Francisco liberal, she's this, she's that. And for a long time, her approval ratings and favorability ratings kind of just reflected that knee jerk reaction. But when she was sort of thrust into this position, people really didn't know. I mean, they asked and are still asking the question, like, well, what does she really believe? Like, is she a liberal? Is she
right.
progressive?
But
Is
she
she a
hasn't done a
moderate? Is
major
she a
press interview.
centrist?
She hasn't done a big sit
She
down.
she has not. But I think that that's actually a great opportunity for her campaign, and I think that the Trump campaign failed early on to make a negative impression stick. People were willing to say, yeah, she's vice president, yeah, Joe Biden, whatever, but they were actually willing to say, like, no, like, yeah, we know she's vice president, but we don't know her, so let's hear what she has
Yeah.
to say. And I think in that time, what they've done such an interesting job doing is talking about progressivism using historically conservative
Oh, it's so
phraseology,
good. Family
couching everything in
values.
terms of freedom and USA Patriot. Like, it's such a wonderful rhetorical shift. I mean, just when we talk about abortion, we talk about it as reproductive freedom. I love it. When we talk about freedom, essentially we're talking about not doing book bans, not banning gay marriage, allowing people to be free from gun safety. Like, we're couching all these things in terms of like, hey, like, you actually should be free from the government encroaching in your personal
Yeah.
life, which is just a rhetorical shift. But I say that because while I do think that they are pushing some policies that are progressive, like the care economy
Mhm.
and paid family leave and all these things, I think that on issues like the border, I think that she is actually going to pivot to the
Oh, I
right
think
a
that's true.
bit. And you saw some of that in the speech. And even on the economy, I don't know for sure how progressive her economic proposals are going to be. I mean, some of them are very populist in nature, which is, we want to build more housing, right? She's come out as a YIMBY. Some of it is we want to combat price gougers. So it'll be interesting when she actually does roll out policy. Where is she going to be at on taxes?
Well,
Where is she
the
going to be
business
at?
executives are very clearly split. So I think she does have to be more moderate and conservative when it comes to how she approaches the business policies. Like price gouging is not a favorable thing for obviously many corporations. Like they don't want to be controlled on their
Exactly.
prices.
I mean, we're in an interesting position running a business. You and I have these conversations all the time. We're looking at
Yo,
margins, right?
it sucks to
And
be a business
so,
owner in this country. I'm not
yeah,
gonna lie.
and I was reading some data where it's like, look, grocery stores operate at a
That's
1% margin.
crazy.
If we came to you with any business that was operating at
Fucking
1%, you'd kill it.
dead.
Like
It's dead on arrival. Actually, Jeff, we do run a business with a 1% margin. One of our product lines, I'm not going to say it here,
oh
has
my
a
God.
1%
Yeah. Oh,
margin. And it's the one we spend a
better
lot of
not
time
say
on,
that.
not AfroTech.
Oh, yeah, it's not AfroTech. Well, but we're currently trying to fix that, which I think
Immediately, yesterday,
we
please.
may talk about. But 1% margin, I mean, for people who don't necessarily understand the concept of margin, I mean, it's the profit margin, right? And the reason why a business needs profit margin is because, people look at businesses and they look at revenue, right? And they don't necessarily take into account expenses. And they say, well, you're making this much money in revenue. You can pay people more, you can do this more. But as a business owner, you have to think about seasonality. You have to think about economic trends. You need margin as a buffer. You need a business that has a healthy profit margin so it can withstand fluctuations in the economy and the natural cycle in the course of business, right? And
Well, not
so,
even just that, just to humanize it a bit more, people want raises. Where does the raise come
exactly,
from? It comes from the margin.
it has to come from
If you
margin.
want to invest in, oh, we didn't have the budget for this marketing campaign, we're going to do the marketing campaign next year. Where does that money come from? Like it has to come from the margin.
It does, right? And so, how this all relates is that when someone says, hey, we're going to essentially combat price gouging, sounds good in theory, but then price gouging, I think a lot of economists will agree, it's not really the cause of
No.
inflation. It's not. I mean, it sounds good. And so, as a business owner, when you hear that and you say, well, does this mean price
Yeah.
controls? Does this mean more government interference? And so, I think people have lots of questions. And I want to be very clear. I think it's been very smart that they have not come right out the gate and said, here's policy.
I agree.
I think that, Hillary did it in 2016.
Terrible
Hillary was
idea.
the most accomplished person to ever run for president, knew everything about everything, came out with all the issues. Elizabeth Warren, the same thing in 2020. And for women, especially for women candidates, you're already going to be held to a different standard. And so the minute you come out with a policy proposal where there is any opportunity for somebody to attack you on it, it's just going to be overblown in a way that Trump doesn't get the same level of scrutiny. Trump comes out and says vague things all the time. And so I think that's been smart, but it's going to be interesting as we do get into the debates and we get into the specifics of policy. Where is she going to be on tax policy? Where is she going to be on the level of net new support and government spending to fund some of these things? I'm interested. I've got some places where I hope she lands, but I'm interested to see where the campaign ultimately
I mean, at this point, I think it's theirs to lose. And I think that's the part that's actually terrifying for them, because when you sit down and do the long form interview with a serious journalist, they're going to push you. It's not going to be hoorah, America. Yes, she can. You know, it's going to be what we're really talking about here. And that's where you're going to lose people. And she hasn't always done well when it comes down to sit down interviews, because people are hard on her. And I think that is going to be challenging. So I'm curious who they pick. I'm curious what network they go with.
Probably a safe, neutral ABC, CBS. And you mentioned that, Kamala Harris is from when she was on the national stage. I mean, I think in the Senate, people sort of looked in when she was on the Judiciary Committee and questioning Jeff Sessions or Brett Kavanaugh. They were like, oh, she, was impressive. But when she ran for president in 2019 and really didn't even make it to the Iowa caucus, people rightly were just like, like she's not really good at this. And when she has done interviews, sometimes as vice president. And again, this is not my view. I mean, look, from our ecosystem, Kamala, we know Kamala from way
Kamala
back
came
in
to the office, to the Black office.
Back in, the first office.
Y'all go ahead
in
and run that
DPLA.
footage if you're watching the video.
Today we're here with presidential candidate, Senator Kamala Harris.
What I think is fascinating is that people who have this view of her from 2019 to June 2024, they're like, oh, she's not a good candidate. She's not a good vice president. And then you see her thrust in this moment, and it's like night and day. You look at her, and you're like,
grown.
this woman is confident. She's grown. And what I really attribute that to is that I think that this is the first time on the national stage when she can really be herself. And it isn't second guessing, what should I say? And am I hitting the notes they want me to hit? It's sort of like, you and I do public speaking. When you're conscious of what you're saying, it doesn't come off
Yeah,
naturally. But when you just say what you want to say and you just do what you want
it's
to
fun.
do, man. And I think that's the difference we're seeing with her. No longer is she like, hey, if I do this, it's going to hurt Biden.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt Biden with the white rural voters in Pennsylvania if I go out and I talk about this in this way. Now she can just say, look, this is my
Boss.
campaign and this is
Yeah.
on me. And it's
I do think she also has the
instantly that
wisdom of
switch.
like Hillary and Elizabeth Warren and like I do
Yes,
think that also goes a long way. Like when everyone's with you,
absolutely.
then you get all of their wisdom and all of their halo, and that boosts your
Exactly.
confidence like 10x. When you're running against people and
Yeah.
it's different. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds. I will say that some of my smartest friends are working on this campaign, like dropped everything. One went off mat leave. Like I'm here and ready to help. So I do think that's positive. Finally, the intellectuals are back.
Yes. The excitement is palpable. Earlier, we referenced AfroTech. AfroTech is always an interesting time of the year because it's
It's the week
right
after.
around
Yeah.
election season. And I remember 2016, AfroTech was the day after Trump was
Yeah.
elected. The energy now is certainly different than it was in 2016. But in 2016, I think we all were like, oh, yeah, like, okay, woman president, we got it, cool, like, let's go. And what I don't want to happen is I don't want to get my hopes
Nah, I
up
think we learned
and to
our
have that
lesson.
moment again. I remember when I watched the first debate, I was watching it on a plane, and I instantly knew how bad it was. The stages of grief when you have to sort of make peace with the
Yeah.
inevitable. I was literally on the plane. I was like trying to convince myself, the Trump presidency won't be that bad. Like I was trying to think of all the reasons. I was like, okay, I mean, maybe democracy will only end a little bit. And, well, maybe he'll cut taxes. And I was really trying to rationalize, like, to make myself okay with the inevitable because I'm like, okay, Biden bombed it. Trump is definitely going to win. And then the assassination attempt happened. I was like, oh my God, like, I was really, because it seemed so inevitable. So to now be in a position where it's like, okay, it's not inevitable that Trump is going to win. And it looks more likely than not that Kamala's going to win. That's exciting, but we've seen this movie before. Trump has always been underestimated. The polls have always underestimated him. He was down to Hillary by 10
Well, yeah,
points.
people
He
don't
was
take
down to
people
Biden by 8
responding to
points
polls.
in the polls. So I'm hopeful, but I think we got to be cautiously optimistic.
I say we do our part, and I say everybody that's listening to this, you do your part, you vote,
Do
do
something.
something, donate, do a debate
Yes,
watch party
donate,
with your
volunteer.
girls, whatever. Do something.
I think the biggest thing is talking to people. Just talk to people and make sure that they are voting. Voting is important. I think a lot of people who, for whatever reason, make the calculation that I don't like either candidate or my vote doesn't matter. And I'm sympathetic to that. I know people who chose not to vote in 2016 because they didn't like either candidate, people who chose not to vote in 2020 because they
Right.
didn't like either candidate. You're never going to have a perfect candidate. And I think talking to people and saying, like, look, you need to vote. Even if you don't vote with what I agree with, we've seen in the last couple of elections, it really does come down to a few votes in a few places.
Yeah.
And especially if you live in these swing states, like you've got to get out there and vote, and people have to be engaged, and they've got to.
I guess to me, it's just like good hygiene. You know what I mean? It's like, do you have to brush your teeth every day? I mean, like, probably not, but like you should.
But you should. You got to get in those
should.
habits. You got to get in the
So
habits.
just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in the
It's not
habits.
optional.
So for sure.
Don't be stank.
For sure.
Don't be a stank citizen. Interrupting this episode for a quick note from our amazing partner. As a new mom, let me tell you, life has been so busy lately. Between working, taking care of a 9-month-old who's starting solids, and trying to stay on top of everything else, sitting down to eat a nutritious meal myself can feel out of reach. That's why I'm so grateful for HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers fresh ingredients and easy, delicious recipes right to your doorstep every single week. For me and my partner, it's an absolute lifesaver. While we're focused on getting our new baby to eat solids for the first time, plus still have all of his milk intake, HelloFresh makes sure that we actually get to eat too. Their new Build-A-Plate meals are perfect because we can customize our plates just the way we like them. No extra cooking, just one meal with something for everybody. So if you're ready to simplify your mealtime routine and make sure everyone in the family is eating well, here's something special for you. For a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/JourneyKids to unlock this exclusive offer. That's one free kids meal per box for 2 months while your subscription is active. Again, that's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/JourneyKids. HelloFresh makes sure that even in the chaos of life, you can still enjoy a great meal. That's why they're America's #1 meal kit. If you're anything like me, you didn't start a business to spend the bulk of your time managing your finances. Between budgeting, tracking expenses, and staying organized for tax time, there goes a good chunk of your day. Get back to doing what you love and let Found do the rest. I've always wondered why there wasn't a baking tool designed specifically for us, small business owners who need something simple, cost-effective, and tailored to our needs. I used to waste money and time every single month juggling multiple apps and complicated accounts. And now Found has a solution for all of that. Found is an all-in-one business banking solution designed for small businesses and solopreneurs. Seriously, it's an absolute game changer. With Found, you can manage your money, track your spending, send invoices, pay contractors, and even handle your own taxes all in one app. No more jumping around between 5 different tools just to keep your business running. And I'm not the only one who's loving Found. Just listen to what one of their users had to say. Found has made managing my small business finances so much easier. I used to dread tax season, but now it's a breeze with all of the tools that Found provides. If you're ready to simplify your business finances and get back to doing what you love, check out Found. Over 500,000 small business owners have already made that switch. Try Found for free at found.com/journey. Sign up for Found for free today at found.com/journey. Okay, moving on to our another segment. Let's talk about AI. So many different things going on. Have you been using any new tools lately?
So I've been using Claude more than ChatGPT, and I've actually been using Claude a lot to help with development, which has been really cool. Claude has their notion of projects and artifacts is really, really cool. And
Wait, explain,
so yeah, so a Claude project is this sandbox in this ecosystem where you can give it a lot of context up front. So you can not only give it a prompt sort of instructions that it remembers, but you can also upload files. So you're able to say like, hey, here's a project I'm working on. Here are the files that I've already done. Here's the style. Here's how I want it to be done. I can basically give Claude information to think like me as a developer, describe myself as a developer, what I know, how I like to code. And every time I go to it, I don't have to net new feed that information in. And I can tell it to create something and it saves what it created and it can refer to it in the future.
This must be a new update.
It is a new update.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really cool. I think it rolled out just kind of in the last couple of months. I mean, these providers are rolling out stuff like every week. What's really cool is that there are now open source tools. Like if you're a developer and you're using, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help with development, there are command line tools that are open source that you can download that just with a small instruction, you can just run one command and it automates all that stuff for you. And so I've been playing around with that stuff and really seeing what the results are and how to use it and how not to.
How has it changed your expectation with our engineering and product team on their efficiency or their accuracy?
There are a couple of ways to think about that. For the engineers that I work with, the way that I evaluate engineers differently now, it's less about do you already know this thing? Because you can quickly find out the thing or you can quickly use AI to do the thing. It's more, do you sort of know how to think and solve problems, right? And so I think previously we were always hiring for people like, have they used this technology before? Because this is what we use. Now it's like, we don't necessarily need you to have used that specific technology, but are you actually someone that can be creative in your problem solving? Because I'm going to need you to be able to work with AI in a way and understand if the outputs are correct and understand how to prompt it, understand what to put in and what not to put in, understand how to take their output and incorporate it, but not rely solely on it. You're going to have discernment and discretion. And so that's a new level of training that I've got to do with the team and also encouraging them to use it in their workflow in a way that's healthy. We don't want them putting all our source code out there in these tools and saving it. But there are ways for things that we're doing or even open source libraries that we're using that they could and should be looking to use AI first, whether it's to save time or it's for inspiration and ideation.
But can I push you on that? Like, I know security is actually a big concern for a lot of people, even myself. But like, when I actually ask myself, is it just ego driven that I'm concerned? Like, do I actually care if Claude has our code? Like, is someone really going to try to duplicate? By the time they use the code, we'll have new code. Like, do we really care?
We do. And some of it is just, reflexive, like as a company, proprietary. Sure. Point taken. But I think that depending upon what type of company now, as a media company, you could make the argument that like, well, if somebody has the code for our CMS, like, is it really going
It's
to,
WordPress.
are we
Like, you know
leaking?
what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Are we leaking trade secrets
Yeah.
or like, no, it's our brand, it's our voice, it's our team, it's our execution. Sure. But I do think that there are certain industries where you don't want to do it
Oh, I agree with
because,
that. But I'm saying, like, for us, I'm
right.
kind of like,
I want developers who have that level of discernment, because what we don't want is for our code to be out there and people use AI nefariously, where now AI is trained on how all this stuff
mm-hmm.
works. And if somebody's like, I want to hack into
Us,
this, we've been hacked before, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you just tell AI like, hey, hack this thing for me, it's going to say, no, I can't do that. But we know that these chatbots can be beat, right? And so you don't want to make the job easier for somebody who is nefarious by putting all the
don't
secret
try to
sauce
hack
there.
Blabbity, by the way.
Please
Please don't.
We left those problems in 2017,
I ain't got the
2018.
margin. Please hack somebody
Exactly.
else.
Yes, please.
It's real. The hackers be taking us down.
But if they come, we're ready.
No, we spend a shit ton of money on infrastructure. Yeah, one of the ways that I've been using ChatGPT actually was I made a bot of myself. So I guess similar to Claude, I just haven't, I guess, seen that feature yet, or I need to figure out how they're labeling it. But in ChatGPT, you can make your own GPT. So I made a Morgan Debaun Echo is what it's called, which is basically a GPT based off of my voice and my language. So I uploaded like all of my newsletters. I uploaded transcripts from my podcast. I gave it URLs and like article PDFs of interviews that I've done with people. Then I have a spreadsheet of all my captions that I use in social, because sometimes my team writes those captions. So then I had, probably like 100 plus captions, and my captions are very storytelling, more narrative based. So then I uploaded that. Then now I can use it to be me, and it's so much better me than I am.
You have a robot.
It's so good.
That's
I use it every day, Jeff. It's so fun. It's like,
I don't know if I'm talking to the real Morgan or the robot
It's
Morgan.
me enhanced. It has changed everything, because previously when you're in ChatGPT, you have to be like, you have to give it all this context. I'm this person, I'm a woman, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing this, we're working on this. Over the course of a few different prompts, I'm going to ask you these questions because we're trying to get to this, and I need you to respond in this way. If you guys don't do that to your prompting, then you need to do better prompts.
You're doing
But well, that's a problem for another day. So I had to do all that. It was driving me nuts because I don't have time to set context every single time. Right. So now I don't have to do that. I can just pull up my Echo and then I type into it and I say things like, oh, write a newsletter. You just did an interview with Angela Rye. You talked about these 4 or 5 different things. Write the newsletter. Chef's kiss. Or I'm like, okay, we're transitioning from Circle, which is our community management platform, to Patreon and Kajabi. Kajabi for courses and Patreon for community. Literally, that's all I had to say. And I said, write the transition emails, write the notification emails, write the sales conversion copy in my voice. Boom, done. Like, so good. Better yet, it has a link that other people can use. So then I was able to give it to my chief of staff, Kate, and all of our virtual assistants. So when they're drafting copy and social for like brand deals and things like that for me to review, they're able to use me.
Wow. So you have an echo of you, a bot Morgan, basically, that you can share with other people. Wow. There's going to be a bunch of mini robot Morgans running around.
So now I'm trying to think like how I can push it further, because now I'm like, okay, it has all this information in it. It has all of my historical like points of view on entrepreneurship and all this types of stuff. So now I'm like, how do I build on top of it so that you all could ask it questions like, Morgan, how could I start a business? Morgan, how do I, raise venture funding? Morgan, why did you start Blabbity? Or what do you think about this? And it would give you a response.
I mean, I instantly, as you talked about, I'm like, people are going to start selling these echoes. Yeah. Like imagine if you had whoever your favorite person in the world is, whoever you look up to, if you had a Reid Hoffman echo that you can just hit up for. Yeah,
Instagram is doing that. So on Instagram, I was in their beta program. I don't know how people interact with me there. I actually haven't figured that out, but I opted in for them to use all my social content on Instagram because I'm like, you're going to do it anyway. So let me just go ahead and opt into this to build an AI of me for people on Instagram to do the kind of same back and forth and DM me, like a bot version of me.
Fascinating.
I don't know when that's going to be widespread released, but
this is like every Black Mirror episode I've ever seen all come to fruition.
Yeah, wow. I'm going to be so curious what's going to happen with brand deals, because it's like, do you want to release on my bot page or my real page?
Yeah, I think a problem that we're seeing now with AI and at Blavity in our business, both a challenge and an opportunity, is it's one that's changing so quickly. One is like, how do you continuously
It's tough.
monetize information and media in the age of AI? When I can literally take anyone's likeness and create net new just like that, how do people who are in the business of building brands and building all these things, how do you continue to monetize? But then also the challenge is like our data is being used to
Hell
train
yeah.
this stuff, as you mentioned, like whether we want to or not. How do we go to these OpenAI and Anthropic and say, you're using our data, partner with us, and one, pay us, one, because our data is making
Money.
what you're providing better, but also let's have a streamlined way to do it in a partnership where you get the data in a way that makes sense
Yeah.
for you, that we can work
We've been
together
successful
on.
at some of that. Like MasterCard
Yeah.
partnered with us to work on a bot for entrepreneurs using our data, and they were upfront about it. And we were like, great. So we struck a deal. MasterCard's been a long time partner of Blavity and AfroTech and myself personally. So that was a positive signal. I think the companies like OpenAI, they're getting sued left and right. Like they're going to be lawsuits up their butt, so.
Yeah.
But they are also striking deals with the larger media companies like Condé Nast and Meredith,
Yeah,
Dotdash.
sure.
They haven't done anything with multicultural publishers. I don't think they have the pressure to. So if anybody knows anybody at OpenAI,
Well, yeah, please tell
tell
them,
them to come to
come
us
talk to us.
because we do have a crazy amount of archives. I mean, think about Travel Noir's archives and like the amount of information that we have that's culturally relevant that only someone with the Black perspective can have related to actually like how travel and recommendations and things like that. Like you're not going to get that just with Condé Nast. You need a Black lens.
Blavity is 10 years old. We have so many brands that touch on so many things. And so even, in this world where let's say that OpenAI wants to get people in the business of, hey, you build your own Echo that you can then productize and sell. Like they're in the commerce business. Well, if I'm building an Echo, if I want an Echo that is tapped into Black culture, I'm a brand and I want to be able to use AI to speak to Black consumers. Well, these data sets need to be trained on data that is culturally relevant. Blavity is the pinnacle source of that data. We are the premier multicultural Black publisher. We are that place that has that data that goes back, that is diverse. So I think it's incumbent upon the OpenAIs of the world, the Anthropics of the world, to come and talk to us and figure out how we can form that kind of
And
a
if
partnership.
they don't, please believe we will sue you. Not us personally, but Black publishers are not afraid to say you are treating us unfairly.
Yeah, the chatter that I'm hearing, from other people in my network who are CTOs and tech people who work in media, now they're like, we need to build tools in the same way that we looked at how do we, one, find people who are using our brands for affirmation and go after them and say like, hey, you got to pay us a license to use our brand to say you're the best place for Black people to eat in this country, right? You got to pay us to use our Travel brand. Yeah, right. You can't just use. Now, publishers are talking about how do we actually use or build technology? It's kind of like plagiarism detection that can tell when our data has been scraped by these bots and is then being used in AI data sets. So we can go after them and say, hey, pay us or we're going to sue.
Amen.
Right.
We do this at AfroTech.
That's
like, when you guys go to AfroTech, there's 30 plus events that are happening in the evening and they're not produced by us, but that's because our partners license the AfroTech name and brand. Exactly. We give them credits for that. We give them access to our list. We give them access to ability to market to you guys and the brand and credibility of it being an official AfroTech event. So there's a way that licensing works for everybody, but I think unfortunately, it's going to be on us, the small guy, to be aggressive. They're not going to do it if they don't have to. So
they're not going to do it.
I've played nice for 10 years, Jeff. I don't know if I'm playing nice in this new season, my friend.
Well, hey, now it's like, what do we got to lose? I mean, we might as well
go ham. We have in-house counsel now. So I'm like, Rocky, what's good? Shout out to Rocky.
Yeah. Shout out to
and so if you guys see the press release, don't well, somebody on our team is actually doing this right now. Shout out to Maren. Someone on our team is literally going through and deciding which tools to use to see what platforms are training their systems on our content. Once I get that report.
I mean, it's necessary. And I think if you're a business owner and you have data, you need people on your team our team, you mentioned Maren, shout out to Maren. We're doing it in two ways. One, we're trying to build these relationships and we're trying to say, hey, partner with us. Like, how can we work together? But also at the same time, he's also looking at we're also playing defense. We're going to play offense and defense. And whichever way this goes, whichever side wins is the side that wins. But we are going to make sure that we don't just sit by idly and get caught by surprise.
100%. And also, just side note, OpenAI did gift us credits for our AI hackathon at AfroTech,
Yeah,
so it's not all bad. Just want to make sure I'm being
exactly.
fair, just to be fair
Shout
to
out to
OpenAI.
OpenAI, yes. And shout out to the AI AfroTech Virtual
Let's
Hackathon,
go.
which I'm just really excited about. I want to just take a quick moment to shout out our team for putting this together. Morgan, for you as a leader for pushing for this to happen. I mean, we built AfroTech 8 years ago, and AfroTech over time has grown to be really the gathering for so many different people in tech
Mhm.
who have so many different backgrounds, who are tech adjacent, who want to get into tech. And we noticed this opportunity to really tell people early on who were riding with us at AfroTech, who were the techies and the innovators and the people writing code, to say that this is still a place for you. This is still a conference for you. It's not just about the parties and the
Yeah.
events and this. Like, yes, that's a part of it in the community, but it is still a place where people who are engineers and who are building with the latest and
Yeah.
greatest, AfroTech is still a place for you. And so this hackathon I'm really excited about because this is what people have been asking for, and we made this come together pretty quickly, and I'm
Yeah, we're
excited to see what
financing
people
it
come up with.
ourselves,
We are.
sweat and tears.
Hmm.
I want to see what people build. Like, to me, now that we're so big, like the impact of how far we can push stuff. So people are using open source data. They're
Hmm.
using, I think we encourage people to use OpenAI and Gemini,
Exactly.
and
Hmm.
just so that people can pick whichever tool they want best. But most importantly, if you win, you get access to the conference, you get your free tickets, but you get
Yep.
visibility. And like those
Hmm.
recruiters that are there, they're not playing around.
Yep.
Like they will hire you
They're
on the
not.
spot with job offers. So
And it's also important that we do this because there's a huge economic opportunity with
yeah,
AI. I mean, you mentioned this. Anybody can make an echo of themselves and potentially let other people use it and
right.
monetize it. And so if we don't get people in our community at the forefront of this when this stuff is just coming out, then we'll be lost. And so for us to be able to encourage people, but not only encourage, actually
To
incentivize
build.
them to do this,
Yeah.
to build, to learn, to be early, I think it's an important cultural shift so that we are not left behind like we've been left behind in other tech
Yeah.
movements in the
I
past.
agree. The submissions are open, you guys. If you're open to it, if you're looking into it or you're curious about it, just go to AfroTech. Yeah,
Afrotech.devpost.com and sign up. Yeah.
AfroTech.devpost.com. We'll put it in the show notes. Get a team together, do it yourself. Like, just have fun with it. But I'm excited to see
Yeah.
what people build. For me, I'm trying to push myself also to get outside of my comfort zone. There was a day when I used
Mhm.
to be like in the back, HTML
Yeah.
coding, trying to change button colors
Mhm.
because I was like, Jeff, if you don't change this button color, I'm
Yes.
coming for
Yes. You were. Yeah. You are a first front end engineer, low key, right?
but like over the years, especially as like things have gotten way more complicated, I kind of like put that part of my building hat off. But I think now with all these new tools, like I can kind of put it back on and say like, well, what do I want to build? What do
Mhm.
I want to
Mhm.
do that's unique or interesting or that's contributing to my current workflows? So the Echo was the first thing. And I didn't even really build it, obviously. Like I didn't have to write a line of code. Like I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, what do you put on top of that? And then how do you use that? Like, do you use that as like an outline for my next book? Like, how do I think about
Mhm.
it? And yeah, I'm just excited to have some space mentally to be able to like be a little bit more creative using technology. I've spent a lot of time being creative as an entrepreneur, a lot of time being creative
Yeah.
even as just like as an artist. But now as a technologist, I'm like, oh yes, we're back, baby.
Yeah. So cool. Such a cool time for sure.
Jeff, anything else you want to talk about?
This is the interesting time. I mean, this election is exciting. We've got 74 days, which sounds long, but it's not a lot of time. It is a lot of time. Time is flying by. So I just really want to emphasize that people stay engaged and make sure that you are paying attention. And regardless, after the election, the world is changing. I mean, AI is something that is going to truly disrupt the way that we live, the way that we
Mhm.
work, the way that we communicate. Again, we got to lean in. We can't be passive when it comes to this because the potential is too
Mhm.
vast and we don't want to get the scraps. So, yeah, I think these things that we talk about, I mean, every time that I've been on, I think we've talked about AI and it's always a fresh topic because
We move so
it's changing
fast.
so rapidly. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
My
lean
hope
into it.
for you all is that you're listening to this and that you feel inspired and that you can make your own decision about how you want to incorporate AI into your life, whether that's to improve your workflow, to build productivity so that you can figure out how you can advance your products, your entrepreneurship, whatever your side hustles are. Like it is absolutely one of those things that you should do and figure out what works for you in the same way that like when the world transitioned from desktops and CD-ROMs to mobile,
Hmm.
it was like, oh, mobile, mobile, mobile. And it's like, yeah, mobile, apps,
Hmm.
phones. Like, this is not Web3. This is
Hmm.
not blockchain. This is a
Hmm.
fundamental shift from desktop to mobile. This is a fundamental shift
Hmm.
from like linear cable TV to streaming. There's no going back. This is not a fad. This is absolutely here. And it will make millionaires. It's already making millionaires, you know? So take advantage of this time to be a part of this inflection point. It is still incredibly early in this journey of AI.
I'm curious really quickly, as a relatively new mom, I mean, you are, raising a son in a world where so much of knowledge will be at his
Yeah.
fingertips, so much automation. I mean, just the way that he's coming into the world when there's a shift in how we interact with the world. Have you thought about how you want him to learn and what his education to look like in the face where there's like AI that can just do anything for you? How do you raise a child that doesn't use it as a crutch, so to speak? But, what do you
I
think
think it's
about
the same
that?
way our parents raised us, which is like you teach somebody how to think, you teach someone how to question, you teach someone how to like logic, if this, then this, and how to be inquisitive and have a spirit of curiosity. And I think that's the case no matter what the generation is. And those are the people who win.
Yeah.
It's not the person who knew how to do all the TI calculator things. That's not the person who won. It's the person who knew how to recode Sims. Like, it's the person who could think outside the box. So I think for Langston, as he grows older, Josh and I are just going to have to continue to think about how we have a spirit of creativity and curiosity. And from there, just support him in whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
And just tell him taking the easy way is never going to you're never going to win. You'll win in the short term, but you're never going to win in the long term.
Love that.
So we'll see. We take it step by step. Right now, we're just working on hi and goodbye. So we'll take it one step at a time.
I miss those days, but I don't miss those days. So.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, Jeff, thank you for coming and dropping some knowledge on us. My takeaways for today: continue to stay civically engaged. Consider playing with a lot of these tools. Buy the upgraded version of them. They're not that expensive for the amount of power that they have. And stay curious. Stay curious. Until next time, see you later. Bye. Peace. Thanks for listening to the Journey podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review and head to our Instagram and YouTube to leave a comment. I look forward to hearing how this podcast has made an impact on your own journey.